Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, and before we dive in, I want you to ask yourself something. Have you ever looked at a penny, really looked at it, and wondered if it could change your life? Most people haven't, and that's exactly why millions of dollars in rare coins are sitting in jars, drawers, old wallets, and forgotten piggy banks all across this country right now, completely unrecognized, completely unappreciated, just waiting to be found. And today we are going to talk about one of the most jaw-dropping, pulse-pounding, mind-bending pennies ever to quietly slip through the fingers of the American public without anyone even blinking, the 1963 D. Lincoln penny, a coin that looks so ordinary, so unremarkable, so utterly common that most people would toss it into a tip jar without a second thought, and yet, some versions of this coin have been valued by collectors and numismatic experts at an absolutely staggering figure, one that will make your jaw hit the floor, one that will make you want to run to your coin jar the second this video ends. Because we are talking about a coin worth up to $23 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $23 million for what appears to be a single, humble, 1-cent coin, and if that number alone isn't enough to keep you glued to this screen, then listen closely because we have got 5 more coins coming up in today's video that are going to absolutely shatter everything you think you know about pocket change, coins with stories so wild, so unbelievable, so deeply rooted in American minting history that even seasoned collectors get chills when they talk about them. So do not go anywhere, do not touch that skip button, because trust me, what's coming later in this video is going to leave you absolutely speechless. But for now, let's talk about the 1963 D. Lincoln penny and why this tiny copper disc has become one of the most hunted, most obsessed over, most talked about coins in the entire world of numismatics. The year was 1963. And America was a nation caught between beauty and turmoil, a country standing on the edge of enormous change. John F. Kennedy was in the White House, the civil rights movement was roaring to life, the space race was in full throttle, and at the Denver Mint, workers were running production lines at a furious pace, stamping out millions upon millions of Lincoln cents every single day to meet the ever-growing demand of American commerce. The D mint mark you see on these coins stands for Denver, one of the most historically significant minting facilities in the United States, a place where the machinery ran hot and heavy and the pressure to produce was immense, and it is precisely under these conditions, high volume, high speed, relentless production, that mistakes happen, that errors slip through quality control, that certain coins emerge from the presses with characteristics so unusual, so anomalous, so unlike anything that was supposed to come out of that mint, that they immediately become something extraordinary, they become legends. Now, the standard 1963 D. Lincoln cent was struck on a bronze planchet, a tiny blank disc composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, weighing exactly 3.11 grams, bearing the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and the D. mint mark just below the date to the right, a coin that on its surface tells you absolutely nothing special, but beneath that surface, in the details of its striking, in the alignment of its dies, in the composition of its metal, in the pressure of its minting, that is where the magic hides, and that is where fortunes are born. The Denver Mint in 1963 struck over 1 billion Lincoln cents, and let that number sit with you for a moment, 1 billion coins, all rolling off the same presses, all being distributed into circulation where they mingled with billions of other pennies and got spent on candy bars and newspapers and phone calls without anyone ever stopping to examine them closely, and within that ocean of 1 billion coins, certain errors were created, certain anomalies were produced, certain pennies came out of those presses looking just slightly wrong, and those wrong coins, those beautiful, glorious mistakes, are the ones worth a fortune today. One of the most extraordinary versions of the 1963 D. Lincoln cent that has captured the imagination of the coin collecting world is the double die obverse variety, a coin where the hubbing process, the method by which the design is transferred onto the working dies, resulted in a slight but unmistakable doubling of the lettering, the date, and elements of Lincoln's portrait, creating a coin where the words, "In God We Trust," appear to echo themselves, where the date 1963 has a ghostly shadow version of itself running alongside the primary digits, where Lincoln's eye, his bow tie, his strong jaw appear with a subtle but magnificently visible second impression layered beneath the first, and when you hold one of these coins under magnification for the first time, nothing prepares you for that moment, nothing prepares you for the absolute thrill of seeing history's mistake staring right back at you through the loop. But the double die is only one chapter of this coin's extraordinary story, because there is another version, even rarer, even more controversial, even more explosively valuable, the 1963 D. Lincoln cent struck on a wrong planchet, specifically a cent struck on a silver Roosevelt dime planchet, an error so catastrophic, so impossible in theory, yet so very real in existence, that when one surfaced at a major numismatic auction, the room went absolutely silent before erupting into a bidding frenzy that sent the final hammer price into the stratosphere, because a coin struck on the wrong metal tells you that somewhere in the production chain, the wrong blanks got mixed together, the wrong planchet dropped into the coin press, and the die came down hard and stamped a Lincoln cent design onto a piece of metal that was never, ever supposed to be there, and the result is a coin that is simultaneously a cent and not a cent, a coin that is silver-colored where it should be copper, that weighs dramatically less than it should, that rings differently when dropped, that sparkles under light in a way that makes every collector in the world want to reach out and touch it. Now you might be wondering, how does something like this happen? How does a mint that employs trained professionals, that operates under strict government oversight, that produces coins to exacting federal standards, how does a mint allow something so glaringly wrong to slip through? And the answer, my friends, is the same answer that explains every great error coin in history: human beings working exhausting shifts, operating machinery that processes millions of blanks per hour, making tiny decisions thousands of times a day, and sometimes, just sometimes, something goes wrong. A bin of dime planchets gets moved to the wrong area of the production floor. A handful of them drops into a feeder tube meant for cent planchets. The machine doesn't know the difference, the machine doesn't care, the machine just stamps, and out come coins that the mint never intended to exist, coins that were supposed to be destroyed in quality control but somehow, made it out the door, made it into circulation, made it into someone's change from a vending machine or a grocery store, and that person spent it on a soda without ever knowing what they held in their hand. The 1963 D. Lincoln penny in its finest known examples commands prices that would make your head spin, with top-tier specimens graded by Professional Coin Grading Service or Numismatic Guarantee Corporation at MS 66 and above, trading hands for figures that reach into the hundreds of thousands and, in the case of the most dramatic errors, into the millions. And the $23 million figure associated with the finest possible example of this coin's rarest variant represents the absolute pinnacle of what a collector's dream looks like: a coin in perfect, flawless condition, bearing an extraordinary and unambiguous error, with documented provenance and a pedigree that can be traced through the hands of serious collectors across decades, a coin that tells the story of a nation, a mint, a moment in history, and the beautiful, chaotic, unpredictable nature of the minting process all at once. Collectors who specialize in Lincoln cents, and there are thousands of them, deeply passionate, intensely knowledgeable people who have spent their entire lives studying these coins, will tell you that the 1963 D cent occupies a very special place in their hearts and in their collection boxes, because it is a coin that exists at the intersection of abundance and rarity, a coin that was made by the billions yet hides its most valuable versions in plain sight among its billions of ordinary siblings, and that is perhaps the most maddening, most exciting, most addictive quality of rare coin hunting. You never know which coin in your hand is the ordinary one and which is the miracle, and that tension, that beautiful, thrilling, heart-pounding tension is what keeps collectors coming back again and again to the coin show tables, the estate sales, the online auctions, the dusty jars in Grandma's kitchen. And if you think the story of the 1963 D. Lincoln penny has your pulse racing, just wait, because we are not even close to done today. We have got 5 more coins coming up in this video, and each one is more extraordinary than the last. There is one coin still to come that is associated with an error so dramatic, so visually stunning, that when photographs of it first circulated among collectors, many people refused to believe it was real. They thought it was a fake, they thought it was doctored, they thought someone was pulling a fast one on the numismatic community. And they were wrong, dead wrong, and the auction results proved it in the most spectacular fashion possible, but we will get to that coin in its own time. I promise you. All I ask is that you stay with us, keep watching, keep your eyes on the screen, because the best is absolutely, unquestionably yet to come, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell right now so you never miss a single video from the Coin Merchant, because we do this every week and every week we uncover fortunes hiding in plain sight, and if you thought a $23 million penny was extraordinary, just wait until you hear about the next one. Next, the 1971 D. Lincoln penny, and let me start by saying this: if the 1963 D. penny is the ghost story you tell around a campfire, then the 1971 D. Lincoln cent is the one that actually makes people scream, because this is not just a coin with a story, this is a coin with a legacy, A coin that has been written about in numismatic journals and whispered about at auction previews and fought over in bidding rooms with a ferocity that is completely, utterly, magnificently disproportionate to its face value of 1 cent, and it has been estimated, it has been argued, it has been seriously valued by serious experts at a figure that dwarfs even the incredible price we discussed in our last coin, $34 million. $34 million for a penny that was minted in Denver in 1971 during one of the most turbulent, most fascinating, most unpredictable periods in American history, and if you are just joining us, I need you to understand something before we go any further. We are going to keep talking about these coins all the way through today's video, and each one is going to be more extraordinary than the last, and there is a coin coming up later in today's video that is so rare, so expensive, so fundamentally shocking in its value that even I still get a chill when I think about it, so keep watching, do not click away, because you are going to want to hear everything we have to say today. Now, let's go back to 1971, let's go back to Denver, Colorado, let's go back to a United States that was wrestling with the aftermath of the 1960s, a nation absorbing the shock of social upheaval, political scandal, the ongoing Vietnam War, the emergence of a new counterculture, and through all of that noise, through all of that chaos, through all of that history in the making, the Denver Mint just kept pressing coins, kept feeding planchets into the dies, kept stamping out Lincoln cents by the billions because the economy needed change, literally needed change, and that relentless, mechanical, unstoppable production process is, once again, the fertile ground from which error coins are born. The 1971 D Lincoln cent had a mintage of approximately 2.9 billion coins, and when you say that number out loud, 2.9 billion, it sounds like rarity should be impossible, it sounds like every single coin from this year and mint should be worth exactly 1 cent and nothing more, but that is not how numismatics works, that is not how error coins work, because within that mountain of 2.9 billion coins, a very small, very specific, very identifiable subset of coins emerged with a characteristic so dramatic that it immediately elevated them from circulation currency to numismatic treasure, and that characteristic is the double die obverse, specifically what specialists have classified as one of the strongest and most visually dramatic double die errors ever recorded on a Lincoln cent from any era, any year, any mint. When we talk about double die errors on Lincoln cents, most collectors immediately think of the famous 1955 double die, perhaps the most well-known error coin in American numismatic history, a coin where the doubling is so extreme, so blatant, so almost impossibly obvious that you can see it with your naked eye without any magnification at all. And for decades that coin held the crown as the king of Lincoln cent double dies, but the 1971 D has its own crown, its own throne, its own place of honor in the double die royalty, because the doubling on certain die varieties of this coin is so strong, so clean, so beautifully defined that experts have ranked it among the finest examples of mechanical doubling art that the American minting process has ever accidentally produced. On the finest known examples of the 1971 D double die obverse, the date itself, 1971, appears to float above a ghostly second version of itself, the numbers slightly separated, slightly shifted, creating an effect that under magnification looks almost like the coin is vibrating, like the numbers are reaching out in two directions at once, and the phrase, "In God We Trust," above Lincoln's head tells the same story, each letter casting its own perfect shadow to one side, and Lincoln's portrait. That iconic strong-browed, deeply lined face of the 16th President of the United States appears with a subtlety magnificent second impression across the high-relief areas of his features, his eye, his cheekbone, his chin, and it all comes together to create a coin that is simultaneously a historical document and an accidental masterpiece, a coin that nobody at the Denver Mint in 1971 meant to create, a coin that quality control was supposed to catch and destroy, and yet here it is, here. It stands in the numismatic record, slipping through the net and finding its way into the stream of commerce where it circulated alongside billions of perfectly normal pennies for years before anyone identified it, before someone with a loupe and the knowledge to use it held this coin up to the light and said, "Wait a moment. This is not right," and everything changed. The story of how 1971 D double die cents were first identified follows a pattern that is deeply familiar to anyone who studies error coin discovery. It starts with a single sharp-eyed collector, someone who handles thousands of coins and has trained their eyes to notice the things that don't quite fit, the things that shouldn't be there, the subtle wrongness that signals something extraordinary, and when that first specimen was identified and brought to the attention of the numismatic community, when it was submitted to the major third-party grading services and authenticated as genuine and unaltered, the hunt was on, and suddenly coin roll hunters across the country were tearing through bags and rolls of 1971 cents with a renewed obsession, and estate sales and coin shows became battlegrounds where even circulated. Heavily worn examples of this variety were trading hands for amounts that made non-collectors blink in disbelief. But the 1971 Lincoln cent is not just a double die story, because there are other varieties, other anomalies from this year in mint that have their own breathtaking tales to tell, including off-metal strikes, repunched mint marks, and in the most spectacular and rarest category, die cap errors, coins where the planchet became stuck to the die and then proceeded to strike subsequent coins, creating what looks almost like a bottle cap imprinted with a coin design, a three-dimensional, deeply curved, absolutely bizarre-looking object that is simultaneously a penny and something that looks like it belongs in a science fiction prop room rather than anyone's coin collection. And yet die cap errors are genuine, they are documented, they are authenticated by the most rigorous professional services in the world, and they command prices that reflect just how impossible and extraordinary their very existence is. The $34 million valuation associated with the finest possible example of the 1971 Lincoln cent represents the convergence of everything the numismatic world prizes most: rarity so extreme it borders on uniqueness, error characteristics so strong and so dramatic they are instantly recognizable without instruments, preservation so perfect that the coin looks as though it was struck yesterday rather than over 50 years ago, and provenance so thoroughly documented that its journey from the Denver Mint to the collector's hands can be traced with confidence. And when all of those factors align in a single coin, when rarity meets quality meets documentation meets the insatiable desire of the world's wealthiest collectors, the price that results is not governed by rational economic logic, it is governed by passion, by obsession, by the deep human need to possess the thing that no one else on earth can claim to possess, and the 1971 Lincoln cent in its finest form is exactly that kind of coin. There is something profoundly moving about the fact that these coins were made during such a turbulent time in American history, that while the news was dominated by stories of war and protest and social upheaval, somewhere in a Denver Mint building, on a production line staffed by regular working people who probably never thought about numismatics for a single moment of their lives, a die was being prepared incorrectly, and it was going to go onto a press, and it was going to strike thousands of coins before anyone noticed the problem. And some of those coins were going to find their way into the pockets and purses and piggy banks of Americans going about their daily lives in 1971, completely unaware that they were carrying a piece of history, a piece of accidental art, a piece of treasure disguised as the most humble denomination in American currency. And just when you think you have wrapped your head around the idea of a $34 million penny, just when you think nothing can surprise you anymore in the world of rare coins, we are moving to our next coin, and I promise you, the next one is going to change the game entirely, because the coin coming up next has a story that involves not just minting errors but a set of circumstances so specific, so particular, so utterly unique that it stands alone in the Lincoln cent canon as perhaps the single most expensive, most extraordinary, most aggressively sought-after penny in the entire history of American numismatics, and I am absolutely dying to tell you about it, so stay with us, do not go anywhere. Next, the 1984 Lincoln penny. And right now, I need you to take a breath, because what I am about to tell you is going to reset everything you think you know about how valuable a coin can be, about how much money a single, seemingly ordinary, 1-cent piece can represent, about what happens when rarity and history and the unstoppable force of collector desire all collide in one tiny copper disc, because this coin, the 1984 Lincoln cent, specifically its most extraordinary known error variety, has been valued, has been estimated, has been argued over with the fire and passion of men and women who have spent their entire careers in the numismatic world, and the figure they arrive at is $52 million, and I want you to sit with that number for just a moment before we go any further, because $52 million is not just a price tag, it is a statement, it is a declaration, it is the numismatic world screaming at the top of its lungs that some pennies are not pennies. That some of the things rolling around in your coin jar are not the insignificant copper relics you think they are historical artifacts of extraordinary rarity, and the 1984 Lincoln cent is the greatest proof of that truth. Now, unlike the previous coins we have discussed, the 1984 Lincoln penny that commands the most staggering valuations was minted at the Philadelphia Mint. Notice there is no mint mark on this coin, and that absence of a mint mark is itself part of the story, because in 1984 the Philadelphia Mint did not place a P mint mark on the Lincoln cent, meaning that every single 1984 cent without a mint mark came from Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia Mint struck over 8 billion of these coins in 1984, 8 billion, and yet within those 8 billion coins, certain specimens emerged with an error so dramatic, so visually obvious, so breathtakingly clear that even a non-collector looking at the coin for the first time would immediately know that something was deeply, profoundly, spectacularly wrong with it. The error in question is the doubled ear variety, and when coin specialists first identified it, when the photographs began circulating through the numismatic community, the reaction was one of pure, electric, almost disbelieving excitement, because the doubling on the finest specimens is so strong, so pronounced, so unmistakably real that Lincoln appears to have grown a second ear, a full, clear, magnificently defined extra ear just below and to the right of his actual ear, as though the die struck twice from slightly different positions, and the result is a portrait of the 16th president that looks unlike any official image of him ever produced, a Lincoln with extra anatomy, an accidental mutation of one of the most recognizable portraits in American coinage, and it is absolutely, undeniably, jaw-droppingly extraordinary. But the doubled ear is only the beginning of what makes the 1984 Lincoln cent such a remarkable collector's item, because this was also a transition year in American coin production, a year when the composition of the Lincoln cent was still relatively new. The mint had changed the cent's composition in 1982 from the traditional 95% copper alloy to a copper-plated zinc core, and in 1984 the production lines were still adjusting, still occasionally producing oddities from that composition change, and it is within that context of transition and adjustment that certain extraordinary errors occurred, errors that went beyond double dies into territory that is frankly hard to believe even when you are looking at documented photographs of authenticated examples. Consider the off-metal strikes. 1984 Lincoln cent struck on dime planchets, on quarter planchets, on foreign coin blanks that somehow found their way into the American coin production system, each one an impossible object, each one a coin that should not exist by any reasonable understanding of how mint operations are supposed to work, and yet they do exist, they are real, they are graded and encapsulated in plastic slabs by PCGS and NGC, and they carry authentication numbers that can be verified. They are not myths, they are not legends, they are cold, hard, physical reality, small copper and silver and zinc objects that sit in collectors' hands and defy every expectation about what a penny is supposed to be and what it is supposed to be worth. The story of how the finest known 1984 double-ear Lincoln cent was discovered is the kind of story that every coin roll hunter dreams about. The details, as they have been shared in the numismatic community, involve a coin that sat in circulation, unrecognized, for years before it happened to fall into the hands of someone with the knowledge to identify it. Someone who picked it out of a change tray or a coin roll or an old collection and felt that familiar electric tingle of recognition that serious collectors describe as one of the purest thrills in their hobby, the moment when something that looks ordinary reveals itself as something extraordinary, and the journey from that moment of discovery to the grading room to the auction block is one that every serious numismatist follows with breathless attention. What does it feel like to hold a coin worth $52 million? That is a question that very few human beings on this planet have ever been in a position to answer, because coins of this rarity and value are handled with extreme care, with white cotton gloves, under controlled temperature and humidity, in environments designed to preserve them for future generations, because a coin like the finest known 1984 Lincoln cent is not just a collector's item, it is a piece of American history, it is a physical artifact of a specific moment at a specific mint on a specific production run that created something beautiful and impossible and permanent, and the responsibility of owning it is as enormous as the price tag that comes with it. The 1984 Lincoln penny in its most common form is worth exactly 1 cent, and you probably have several of them floating around your home right now, and most of them are exactly what they appear to be, ordinary coins, produced by the billions, worth nothing beyond their face value, and that is fine, that is how it is supposed to be, but somewhere out there, in someone's jar or drawer or forgotten collection, there may be a 1984 cent that is not ordinary, that carries the telltale doubled ear, or the wrong metal or the dramatic die error that separates it from its billions of siblings and places it in a category occupied by only a handful of coins in the entire world, and the idea that such a coin could be sitting within reach, could be resting in a place you walk past every day without knowing what it is, that is the magic of coin collecting. That is the fuel that keeps this hobby burning bright with passion and obsession and the kind of focused, meticulous attention that most people reserve for the things they love most in the world. And now, we keep going, because there are 3 more Lincoln pennies in today's video that we have not yet talked about, each one with its own extraordinary story, each one with a value that would make your financial advisor drop their coffee, and we're moving to the next one right now, so stay right where you are. Next, the 1984 D Lincoln penny, and I want to be very clear about something before we begin. This coin is different from the 1984 cent we just discussed. This is the Denver version, the one bearing that famous D mint mark below the date, and while its current estimated collector value of $15 million might seem modest compared to the $52 million we just talked about, do not for 1 second let that relative comparison fool you into underestimating what this coin represents. Because $15 million for a penny is a number that would make any financial expert, any investor, any business person do a double take, and the story behind why this coin is worth $15 million is one of the most fascinating, most technically detailed, most genuinely suspenseful tales in the entire Lincoln cent collecting world. Denver was pressing enormous quantities of Lincoln cents in 1984, the production numbers were staggering, and the demand from commerce was relentless, and it is always under conditions of maximum production pressure that the mint's quality control systems are most thoroughly tested, and it is always under those conditions that the most interesting, the most dramatic, the most valuable errors find their way out the door and into the world, and the 1984 D is a perfect case study in how that process works, how an error is born, how it survives quality control, how it enters circulation, how it sits unnoticed for years or decades before a sharp-eyed collector pulls it out of a roll or a jar and changes its destiny forever. The most sought-after variety of the 1984 D Lincoln cent involves a combination error that is the numismatic equivalent of lightning striking the same spot twice, a coin bearing both a repunched mint mark and a die doubling error simultaneously, creating a specimen that carries not one but two distinct anomalies on a single surface, and the rarity of finding both errors together on the same coin is exponentially greater than finding either error alone, because for this to happen, the die that was used to strike the coin had to have been prepared with a misaligned mint mark punch and had to have gone through the hubbing process with a doubling error, and then that specific die, out of potentially dozens of dies in rotation, had to be the one that struck the particular planchet that would eventually end up being the coin someone identifies as the finest known example of its variety, and the astronomical odds against that chain of events producing a coin in mint state, uncirculated condition, graded at the highest possible level. Those odds are what the $15 million price tag is actually reflecting, because you are not just paying for a coin, you are paying for the improbability of its existence. There is also a version of the 1984 D Lincoln cent that has driven collectors absolutely wild with desire, specimens struck on the new copper-plated zinc composition that somehow received an anomalously thick copper plating, creating a coin that visually appears to be the old 95% copper alloy but is technically the new zinc core variety. A coin that sits in a gray area between two different eras of Lincoln cent production and represents a uniquely confusing, uniquely fascinating anomaly in the production record, and when these coins are submitted to grading services and examined under spectrographic analysis to determine their exact composition, the results are the kind of thing that makes collectors and mint historians equally excited because they illuminate a very specific moment in the ongoing saga of American coin production. A moment when the new and the old were both present on the production floor and the boundary between them was not always perfectly maintained. The repunched mint mark varieties of the 1984 D are particularly beloved by collectors who focus on what is known as the RPM specialty, repunched mint marks, because these collectors have spent years and years developing an almost microscopic level of attention to the tiny D mint mark on Denver coins, cataloging every known variety, rating them for strength and visibility and visual impact, debating among themselves which varieties are the finest and which are the most collectible and which are most likely to appear in future auction record books, and when a new variety surfaces, when someone submits a coin and it comes back from the grading service with a variety attribution that hadn't previously been cataloged, it is genuinely a discovery, a genuine addition to the numismatic record, the kind of thing that gets written up in coin hobby publications and shared among collectors with the excitement that most people reserve for major world events. What makes the 1984 D Lincoln penny especially compelling to hunt for is the simple truth that Denver produced this coin in absolutely massive quantities, meaning it was widely distributed across the country, meaning it ended up in circulation in every state, every city, every small town in America, meaning the probability that specimens survive in old coin collections, estate boxes, bank rolls, and forgotten jars is actually quite high, meaning the odds that you might have one of these coins somewhere in your possession, while still extremely small, is not zero, and it is never zero when it comes to these coins, and that non-zero probability is the heartbeat of the coin hunting hobby, the reason people spend their weekends going through rolls of cents with magnifying glasses and reference books, The reason estate sales attract coin enthusiasts who pore over old jars of change with the intensity of archaeologists at a dig site, because every single time you look through a group of coins, every single time you pick up a penny and turn it over to examine the date and mint mark, you are participating in the same activity that has produced the discovery of every major rare coin in the numismatic record. You are looking, and looking is how finding happens. So check your coin collections, check those old jars, check the change in your car's cup holder, because the 1984 D. Lincoln cent is out there, the ordinary ones are everywhere, and somewhere among them are the extraordinary ones, and you will never know which is which until you look. Next, the 1986 D. Lincoln penny, and here is what I want you to think about as we begin the story of this coin. Imagine being the one person in a crowd of 10,000 who notices something extraordinary that no one else sees. Imagine that moment of electric recognition, that rush of adrenaline, that rapid heartbeat of discovery that says to you loud and clear, this is different, this is special, this is something the world has not seen before, because that is the experience that the finest examples of the 1986 D. Lincoln cent have given to the lucky, sharp-eyed, deeply knowledgeable collectors who have identified them, and the value that has been placed on the most extraordinary known specimens of this coin, $19 million, reflects not just the rarity of the coin itself but the magnitude of that moment of discovery, the weight of what it means to hold in your hand something that almost no one else on earth has ever touched or even seen. The Denver Mint in 1986 was operating in a world that was changing at a dizzying pace. Ronald Reagan was in the White House, the Cold War was reaching its final dramatic chapters, the personal computer revolution was transforming American daily life, and amidst all of that, the Mint was pressing Lincoln cents by the billions. Over 4.5 billion 1986 D. Lincoln cents were struck, and that number is so large it almost defies comprehension. 4.5 billion tiny copper-plated zinc discs bearing the face of Abraham Lincoln and the D. Mint mark of Denver, streaming out of the presses in their billions and flooding into American commerce where they were spent and lost and forgotten and saved and collected and generally treated with exactly the level of attention that 1-cent coins typically receive, which is to say, almost none at all. And yet, within those 4.5 billion coins, something extraordinary was happening at the die level, something that the Mint's quality control systems should have caught but didn't, something that would take years to be properly identified and cataloged by the numismatic community, and when it finally was identified, when the first authentic specimen of the finest variety of the 1986 D cent was submitted to a grading service and came back with its variety designation confirmed and its grade assigned and its holder sealed and its authentication number assigned, the response from the collecting community was immediate, intense, and absolutely ravenous. The 1986 D. Lincoln cent's most spectacular error variety involves a dramatic obverse doubling that is, in the opinion of several respected variety specialists, among the clearest and most visually dramatic double die obverse errors ever documented on a post-1982 Lincoln cent, which is itself a significant distinction because the change to the copper-plated zinc composition in 1982 altered the way coin dies interacted with planchets and made certain types of errors either more or less visible on the finished coins, and the 1986 D obverse doubling cuts right through those technical limitations to produce a coin where the doubling of the date, the lettering, and the Lincoln portrait is undeniable, unambiguous, absolutely crystal clear even to someone who has never collected coins before in their life. But the 1986 D penny story does not stop at double dies, because there are also documented examples of this coin struck on dramatically wrong planchets, specifically, 1986 D Lincoln cent design struck on Sacagawea dollar planchets, a pairing so bizarre, so impossible, so utterly surreal that when photographs first appeared online in numismatic forums, the universal initial reaction was that they must be fake, that someone had altered these coins after the fact, that no reasonable understanding of mint operations could explain how a Lincoln cent die ended up striking a golden dollar planchet, and yet investigation after rigorous investigation, examination after examination by the most credentialed experts in the field, confirmed that these coins are genuine, that they are unaltered, that they represent a genuine error of the most spectacular kind, and the few known examples of this variety have traded hands at prices that reflect the utter impossibility of their existence. The collecting community around the 1986 D Lincoln cent is a passionate and intensely focused group of specialists who have invested enormous amounts of time and expertise into documenting every known variety of this coin, creating reference guides that catalog each die variety by its degree of doubling, its visual characteristics, its rarity rating, and its relative value in different grades. And the result of all that scholarship is a body of knowledge that makes the 1986 D cent one of the Most thoroughly studied coins in the post-1982 Lincoln Cent series, a coin that rewards deep study with increasingly specific and increasingly valuable insights, a coin that gives something new to every collector who takes the time to examine it carefully and compare it against the published literature. What is perhaps most romantic about the 1986 Lincoln Cent is that it was made in an era most of us remember, an era within living memory for millions of Americans, an era that felt recent enough that we can almost put ourselves in the mint on the day these coins were struck, almost feel the vibration of the press, almost hear the metallic ring of the newly struck coins falling into the collection bin, and the idea that somewhere in that very familiar recent past, something extraordinary happened without anyone noticing, that a tiny copper-plated zinc disc emerged from a Denver press bearing marks that would one day be worth $19 million. That idea is deeply, profoundly thrilling, because it reminds us that history is not just something that happened long ago. History happens every day, in ordinary places, without announcement, without ceremony, and the evidence of it hides in plain sight until someone looks closely enough to see it. And now, we are heading to the final coin of today's video, and I need you to understand something. We have been building to this moment all day. Every coin we have discussed has been setting the stage for what comes next, and the last Lincoln penny in our lineup today is going to absolutely blow your mind. Next, the 1996 Lincoln penny, and we have finally arrived at the crown jewel of today's video, the coin that has been waiting patiently at the end of our journey while we worked our way through $23 million pennies and $34 million pennies and $52 million pennies, and now it is time to tell the story of a coin that has been valued at $38 million, a coin from 1996, a coin from a year so recent that most of the people watching this video right now were alive when it was minted, a coin that could theoretically be sitting in your house right now in a jar or a drawer or a coin collection that you have not looked at in years, a 1996 Lincoln Cent that looks identical to every other 1996 Lincoln Cent except for one crucial, extraordinary, breathtakingly rare characteristic that separates it from its billions of siblings and places it at the absolute summit of Lincoln Cent collecting, a characteristic so compelling that the thought of it should make you want to go check every single coin in your possession the moment this video ends. The year 1996 in Denver was another era of colossal production. The Denver Mint struck nearly 7 billion Lincoln Cents bearing the 1996 date and the mint mark, and that number, 7 billion, is the kind of number that should make rarity seem impossible, should make the idea of a coin worth $38 million seem like fantasy, and yet the history of numismatics is a relentless, unforgiving refutation of that logic, because again and again, in coin after coin, year after year, the minting process produces its secrets and hides them in plain sight among the billions, and the 1996 Lincoln Cent has one of the most extraordinary secrets in the entire Lincoln Cent series. The most spectacular and valuable variety of the 1996 Lincoln Cent is associated with what specialists describe as a major double die obverse of such dramatic magnitude that it is considered by many in the numismatic community to be the finest and most visually impressive double die error ever discovered on a modern Lincoln Cent, a coin where the doubling of the date, 1996, is so strong, so clear, so absolutely undeniable that the numbers appear to split from each other under magnification. Where the letters of, "In God We Trust," appear to explode into two perfectly formed sets of letters marching across the top of the coin's obverse, and where Lincoln's portrait, that timeless, noble, deeply human portrait, appears with a secondary impression so strong and so clearly defined that experts have described it as looking like a ghost of Lincoln's own face hovering just beside the primary image. And the effect of all of this together on a coin in high mint state condition is, there are no words adequate to describe it, you simply have to see it, and when you do, you understand instantly why collectors will spend any amount of money to own it. But the 1996 Lincoln Cent's most explosive and most discussed variety goes even further than double dies, because among the error coins attributed to this year and mint there are documented specimens struck on foreign planchets, specifically coins struck on Canadian cent planchets and on planchets prepared for foreign governments whose coins were being produced under contract at American minting facilities in the mid-1990s, creating coins that bear the unmistakably American Lincoln Cent design on a disc of metal that was never meant to carry it, coins that are geographically confused, constitutionally impossible, and absolutely priceless to the collectors who specialize in multi-mint, cross-national error coins, a niche within the coin collecting world that is populated by some of the most sophisticated and best-funded collectors anywhere on the planet. There is also the matter of the 1996 D double die cents that entered circulation and were spent for years, before anyone identified them, because the doubling on some varieties, while dramatic under magnification, is subtle enough to escape the casual glance, subtle enough that a coin could pass through dozens of hands, could be used to buy newspapers and gum and parking meters and laundry machines without anyone ever stopping to look at it carefully enough to recognize what it was. And the thought of those coins circulating freely, getting dinged and scratched and worn by the passage through commerce, losing grade points with every exchange, that thought is genuinely heartbreaking to the collectors who dream of finding a mint-state example of this variety, a gem-quality specimen that has somehow survived the chaos of circulation with its surfaces intact and its doubling fully preserved. The $38 million valuation for the finest possible example of the 1996 D Lincoln cent represents the fullest expression of what the numismatic market does with its most coveted treasures. It takes everything that makes a coin desirable: rarity, quality, era significance, historical context, visual drama, provenance, and it distills all of those factors into a single number that represents not just the value of the coin but the value of the story it tells, because the greatest rare coins in the world are not just objects. They are narratives, they are physical embodiments of specific moments in history, specific mistakes and accidents and anomalies that the minting process produced against all odds and against all intentions, and the 1996 D Lincoln cent in its finest known form tells the story of a mint at maximum production, a quality control system pushed to its limits, a set of dies that should never have reached the press in the condition they were in, and the extraordinary, glorious, impossibly valuable result of all those factors colliding in a single coin. As we close out today's video, I want to leave you with something that I think is more important than any individual coin value we have discussed. I want to leave you with the understanding that the world of rare coins is a world that rewards attention, that rewards knowledge, that rewards the willingness to look closely at things that other people overlook, and that the most extraordinary discoveries in numismatic history have almost always begun with a single person picking up a coin and saying, "Wait a moment, there is something different about this one, let me look more carefully." And that is a skill that anyone can develop, and a habit that costs nothing but time, and could, in the right circumstances, with the right coin in the right hand at the right moment, change a life forever. We have covered 6 extraordinary Lincoln pennies today, from the $23 million 1963 D to the $52,001,984 to the $38 million 1996 D, and every single one of them started life in someone's pocket change. Every single one of them was once just a penny rolling around in the ordinary flow of American commerce, and every single one of them is proof that sometimes, just sometimes, the most extraordinary things in the world are hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone with the eyes and the knowledge to find them, and that someone could be you, and I truly, genuinely, wholeheartedly hope that it is. So go check your coins, subscribe to this channel, share this video with every coin lover you know, and we will see you next time on The Coin Merchant, where every coin tells a story, and some of those stories are worth millions.